Okay, thank you. Actually, I'm not even going to take 10 minutes. I'm going to take 5 minutes, so we can chat after that. Very quickly, at the beginning of this year, we decided to re-image Livemint, and that was a brief. We actually wanted to re-image all our websites. The reason we wanted to do that was because we did something that many news publishers don't do. We went back to consumers, users, customers. The reason news publishers don't do it is because for so many years, just intuitively, news publishers have ostensibly mastered the art of producing news and serving it in newspapers and knowing exactly what to do every day, and a lot of that is already translated onto the internet. Going back to customers was a revelation, because they told us lots of stuff, and actually that's the piece that I'm going to take you through, and I'm also going to tell you what happened as a result of that. So reimaging Livemint actually became, sorry, this is not moving. It's not moving. You have to point it somewhere? Point it there. Is there a computer I can click? What are you pressing? So reimaging Livemint actually became reimagining Livemint. That's our conventional newspaper. We're all used to reading it. We turn pages. We know what section comes on what page. When I get the newspaper in the morning, I flip it over because I want to read the sports page first. I then go to the op-eds and then the front page. All of us know what to do with the newspaper. The newspaper at some point of time gave rise to e-papers, which still exist, by the way, and do well. The e-papers were basically the newspaper online, and you could flip pages and you could read them exactly like the e-paper, like the newspaper. Some people prefer doing this, and that's fine. The e-paper then gave us news websites, and not surprisingly, even though they became interactive and there was lots of recommendations, there was more curation, what actually happened was these were avatars of the newspaper, because that's what we had always produced, with pages and sections and articles housed in one section and another section. And in many ways, what we were doing was replicating the newspaper in the Internet Avatar, and that's what we've done for many, many years, and some of our own websites too now we continue to do. And we do it really well, and we make it really interactive, and we are contextual, and so we manage to get people consuming a lot more content than they would normally produce. What we did, however, with Livemint was we broke the whole convention of news in pages. We said there is no static page. There is no page. What is a page? A page is a static concept. The internet is not a static concept. And we said, why should there be a page? Or why should there be pages? And why should there be this complex navigation of now I've clicked and I will go to another page. And from there I will go to the first page and something else will happen. So we just flipped that around and we said, let's break out of the belief that you have to have pages and you have to have complex navigation. And users were telling us this, and a lot of what happened after that was user first. Because users also told us many other things. They told us that, we like you because you're a trusted source of information. They told us, we have different needs through the day. We want to skip through headlines in the morning, and then when we have a little more leisure, we want to read news in detail. And there are times when we're sort of on our way somewhere, and there isn't enough time to read a full article. So you should have enough information, and you should know what's going on. Choices should be more informed. Clickbait happens because we don't know what to click through. And a lot of that went into design. The third thing we did was we just inverted the whole thinking of desktop and mobile. We realized that 80% of news consumption, actually, I was corrected this morning, 90% of news consumption on the internet actually happens on the mobile phone. Yet we were all, and we continue to design websites for the desktop, And technologically, the desktop design actually then adapts or responds to screen sizes, and sort of builds out of what we thought of for the desktop. We just looked at it and said, what if we reverse this? What if we just designed a website for the mobile phone and it adapted itself onto the desktop? And the 10% people who were going through the desktop design actually got a consistent experience to the mobile versus vice versa. And lastly, customers told us that we want hyper relevance. We don't have time. We want you. The reason we like Facebook and Google is because they seem to know what we want to see. And while as news publishers we often tend to think of ourselves as more serious, and our customers were telling us that this is true, that they do want more relevance. So all of this gave rise to a brand new website which had no pages. In fact, it has only one page. It's a fascinating website because it has only one page. And if you look at this video which is playing, the article opens in the same page and shuts in the same page. And you're actually not going outside of the page structure to do anything. There are other interesting things, like if you don't want curated news or personalized news, you can simply switch to the latest mode, which also works the same way, which will give you news in chronological order. This just broke and you can see it now. And interestingly, little details like my reads. What is my reads? I mean, I can tell you personally from my example, there are so many times I've read an article and then I don't know how to find it. And then I go to Google search and I'm trying to remember which publication I read it in. This is a simple mechanism. It says, if you've read an article, it's lying there. It doesn't matter whether you've registered with us, not registered with us. If you ever want to go back to an article you read, it's there because you read it. If you read half of it, it's there. If you read a little bit of it, it's there. It's just there. So you don't need to bookmark anything anymore. Anything you go to is there. And the results of something as tiny as that were incredible. How did it work? And Ashwini, we are getting to the money slide and to you in a minute. Basically, this is how we make money, right? There are users. When users come more often, spend more time, consume more content, we get ad impressions. Those ad impressions mean more money if there's more viewability and people click through more. And if you multiply all of that, it adds to dollars. Now, when we made this website, the naysayer said, you're not going to make money. You've only got one page. Where are you going to put your ads? What are you going to do with advertising? How are you going to work through this? And we said, no, what happens if engagement goes up? What happens if viewability goes up? What happens if scroll depth goes up? What happens if people are actually consuming more news? And it's good for them. If it's good for them, they might just reward us with more time. And more time means more advertising. And everybody was like, you guys are crazy. This is the most ridiculous thing you could ever have done. But this is what actually happened. Our page views went up 2x, and this is so far, the journey so far. The time spent went up 30%, the total minutes. The number of visits went up 25%. Viewability of ads went up 10%. The number of impressions went up in the same proportion as the number of page views. So for everybody who was saying, you aren't putting as many ads, how are you going to get ad impressions? Well, that's the answer. That's what engagement can do for you. Our CPMs went up, and broadly, we are making on a monthly basis 3 times the money we were making. So consumer first, engagement first, bottom of the pyramid thinking can be lucrative. A little bit on the personalization journey. It's not a magic wand. We're still partly through there. So all of you, some of you may have experienced personalization because we're testing it in various forms. Some of you may not have experienced it yet on Livemint. But I can tell you that every time it works and every time we reach a milestone on the personalization journey, the CTRs and scroll depth jump. So it does work, but it's a journey. And it's not all fair weather. We've been through sleepless nights over the last 6 months. Early feedback is very tough, especially when you change design. It's the app versus the web economy. We're a largely web economy. And the things you can do on an app, you can't necessarily do on the web for various reasons. The ecosystem doesn't always mirror technology for design. So, you're dependent on Google and Facebook and so many other people. They don't always mirror your desire for design change. And our ad formats have got limited to some extent, which we are working on. But all in all, it's been a good journey. I always say 1% done, and we're on our way. And Ashwini is ready with questions, I think. So we can.
Hi, Rameet. Thank you for being here. Lovely to have you here. Hi, everybody. Good morning once again. Sorry about earlier. That was a good presentation, Rameet. I do have a lot of questions. We have 15 minutes and I have 5 questions, okay? So I'll just quickly run you through what I want to know. One, I want to know about the design aspect, okay? Second, I want to know about the algorithm aspect. We can't ignore that. Third, I want to know about classification of content on the website. Sections versus topics, because this is something even we at AFAX grapple with. You know, something makes sense to us as publishers, but it may not make as much sense or any sense at all to the reader. Okay, then I want to know how this has impacted revenue. I know you had a slide on that, but it'll be great if you can expound on that. Because typically when sites redesign, there's a dip in revenue and then things settle down. And lastly, I want to ask...
That's 7 questions so far.
No, 4. And the 5th one is, I want to know more about the scandalous decision to make a mobile site first and then adapt that to the desktop. It's usually the other way around. So hopefully we'll have time for all 5. First of all, Rameet, I want to know, tell me about the design aspect. Your website is clean and neat, but it doesn't look like a newspaper at all. It looks like a social media site. It looks like social feed. On the homepage, I see you have cards. So what's that about?
So quickly, first of all, you know, we tend to, I'm not saying you're being, but many of us tend to be very condescending about social media because it's social media. But the truth is there's lots to learn from social media, and we all spend time on social media. You know, their ability to personalize, their ability to be dynamic, their ability to contextualize information, to engage us, the way they've mastered infinite scrolls. There's a million things to learn. And I won't lie to you when I tell you that when customers gave us feedback, a lot of their benchmarks probably being set by some of those experiences. But those are the benchmarks set in their head for consumer experience, and you can't run away from that. Having said which, you know, just from a design point of view, why is this cards and feed?
Yes.
And why is this infinite scroll? The truth is that we wanted to be able to give a simple but comprehensive experience to customers for their needs through the day. 1. 2, we wanted it to be possible for them to be making informed choices into what they clicked through. So the whole concept of clickbait just died that minute, right? And 3, in many ways, customers were asking us for relevance. And there was only one way to do that, which was to build a structure like this, which was dynamic, which was infinite, which wasn't static, and which had cards. The other thing I'll tell you that cards does is from a content creator's point of view. It allows us real speed as we go to market, because whether it's videos, infographics, widgets, first out news, a card is a simple standard format that can get replicated very quickly, dragged and dropped. There is no page structures and discoverability and time to go live to really be concerned about. So in so many ways, it works both from the point of view of being able to create rich, comprehensive content and be able to serve the customer's need of convenience and information.
Okay. Okay, that answers it. Secondly, Rameet, it's all very well to say we're going to redesign a website, but none of it will make sense if Google and Facebook don't get it, if they don't understand what you're trying to do. So walk us through the algorithm challenges, and did you learn that the hard way?
Google's not dumb, just a little slow sometimes. And in this case, I think we caught them by surprise, because so many things happened with this design. I mean, not only did we change the design, we changed the content hierarchy. We changed the way we were sort of looking at URLs, because this is a completely new experience. We also changed our backend because it was important for content creators to be able to sort of replicate some of this. So in so many ways, first, there was an SEO impact. So the first couple of months was huge SEO impact because Google took its time to index us. The other thing that happened was that a lot of things like AMP pages and FPI and the whole external distribution ecosystem that feeds into your website simply wasn't ready from a design point of view to be able to replicate something like this. Google is infinite scrolls, but they're still in beta tests for a lot of that. So it's been a struggle getting some of that external ecosystem to work in step with us. The SEO piece is sort outable. The design piece, there's a big learning there for us, which is, design of course is about technology and content and users and, putting it all together. But design is also about managing the ecosystem. And that's a big learning, because that's been a few sleepless nights.
Okay, I believe you. Now about classification of content on Livemint. What works better, sections or classifying it by subject, by topic? And what makes more sense to the reader? And I see there's a skew away from sections and towards topics on Livemint. So am I right? And what does that do for you?
So, when you ask users what do you want, the answer is, and I've done this for 25 years, right? Go to users, what do you want? I want everything, I want it now, and I want it to be simple. Those are the three answers you always get, right? But it's not always as easy as that. Users, of course, told us we don't need sections. What are sections for? If I'm getting the news that I want, now that's tricky. If I'm getting the news that I want, if it's easily discoverable, if I'm able to make an informed choice, then I want to be able to contextualize that with everything around that news, which is topics, right? I don't need sections if you're doing all of this for me. Sections are a crutch. And they didn't say it in so many words, but they kept coming back and saying, I don't understand why all of these sections exist. I would rather have this topic and be able to see what to do with it. But what are topics, finally? Topics are a combination of stories. So stories make topics. Topics don't make sections, because a topic can actually fit into many sections.
Okay.
But broadly and loosely, a section is the superset of topics. Now, if you either don't have enough content or enough topics, enough content in a topic or topics, it hurts you both from a user experience point of view and an SEO point of view. So you would rather move one level up, and the only way to do this in our current structures is to move to the level of section. So therefore the play between topics and sections, simply because you are broader basing to allow more content, sometimes more diffused but loosely contextual content into the user journey. Given a choice, we would just stay with topics, but it's not an easy play.
What's easier to personalize?
Topics.
Topics for sure. Okay. Now, Rameet, do walk us through once again how this has impacted revenue and what's the biggest lesson here?
We're always chasing the top of the pyramid. So there is this pyramid it's an inverted triangle. On top is all the customers that we acquire, and then some customers spend a little bit of time, and then fewer customers spend more time, and then even fewer spend more time, and then there's the bottom of the pyramid, which is your most loyal customers, and they spend the maximum amount of time with you and give you disproportionate returns. And all of us are always chasing the top of the pyramid because we want to acquire more customers. And we forget that actually the money, the loyalty, the affinity, the brand lies as you move down the pyramid. This whole redesign has actually been done to foster engagement, to actually build as the pyramid goes down. Of course, acquisition is important, but that's what we've built for. And what we've realized is that as you keep pushing, at the lower fringes of the pyramid, the returns are disproportionate. So when time spent goes up, returns are disproportionate because the advertising is much higher quality, the audience is much higher quality. When the viewability of ads goes up, there is a premium to it. When the ads are more contextual, there is higher click-throughs to it, and all of that is more money.
But this happens eventually, but did it get worse before it got better, so to speak?
On a per user basis, no. On an absolute basis, yes, because for the first 2 months we lost the top of that pyramid. But as users began to come back, and as search began to work and social sort of found its place again, the absolute numbers didn't just grow, they grew many folds. But to begin with, the absolute number was
Okay, and now tell us about the process of redesigning for the mobile and then adapting it to the desktop. What was that like? Because there are no lessons, there is no precedent to that.
I mean, it's a simple choice. You either design for the desktop and allow it to adapt to the mobile. There's three choices. Or you adapt for the mobile and allow it to design to adapt to the desktop. And the third choice is you have two different websites and you go through the cumbersome process of each time managing a mobile site and a desktop site, which doesn't make sense in news because speed to market is really fast. And there's only that many people who can actually curate news. Now, we've done desktop to mobile all our lives. But now that 80-90% of people are actually consuming news on the mobile phone, it didn't make that much sense. So we said, what happens if we actually maximize the experience for the mobile site and allow it to come to the desktop site? And we actually did it, and then we saw the desktop site, and the answer was the desktop site is not as pretty.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't it look weird initially?
Yeah, I mean, we got lots of flack. People on Twitter said, I hate you, we hate this site, you have ruined this site, you've killed this site, a handful of people. Internal customers, very senior internal customers who used to go to our desktop site, like, what have you done? But as the days passed, and actually the desktop site began to perform even better than the mobile site, because actually, if you intuitively, the desktop site is perfect. Science says the eye moves from left to right, from top to bottom, and starts in the middle, which is why you always design for the middle, even if you were to do a desktop site. And this was a feed in the desktop site, which was working intuitively like 90% of your experience in the rest of the world. So the desktop site actually began to outperform the mobile site. And finally, data speaks, because as people engaged more and more and more with that website, we realized that they were getting used to it. And now, there are much fewer naysayers, due respect to the people who didn't like it or don't like it, because there will always be some, but you can't please everybody. But data suggests that that it seems to be working.
Okay. Now we do have time for one more question. It's a bonus question. You've answered all my questions about Livemint. But Rameet, you've had a very fascinating career. You've started out with the agency side at Burnett, then you worked at McDonald's as marketing head and Zomato marketing head, and you had a brief stint at Viacom, so you've done the broadcaster side as well, and now of course you're a publisher. So what's left, by the way? What platform? A tech platform?
EFAX.
Yeah. So no, I want to understand, Rameet. What does Rameet the marketer say to Rameet the publisher? What are the lessons you keep drawing on even now? I'm sure there are some interesting anecdotes from your McDonald's and Zomato days.
I want to tell you a story, and this is a story of when I was very, very wrong. This was in McDonald's, and part of my work was reputation and brand, and I had some international stake in the global network on what was happening on design, and a lot in India. And we were moving from the familiar red and yellow to the black signages and the swanked up restaurants and very exciting restaurants. And I was aghast. I said, this red and yellow, the red with the golden arches, is like telegraphic. I look at it and I know it's McDonald's. And these restaurants are about so much familiarity. Don't change them. It was one of those things of over my dead body type of things. But I was overruled, and we did change them. We started that process in 2010. God knows, by the time we got to 2014, I was so thankful somebody had overruled me, because I learned a very important lesson. The lesson was that the consumer doesn't pay for familiarity. The consumer was actually going to malls, he was going to other restaurants, he was going to nightclubs, he was going abroad. And he was experiencing new culture, he was experiencing better design, better restaurants. And all our research showed us that even those 4 years that investment had not happened, we would have been far, far behind the curve and actually been familiar, but alien, like it. I think Livemint, this website, is ahead of its time. In some ways, it's disruptive, it's ahead of the curve. It's a new site that has done something bold and something courageous. And in many ways, we struggle because the ecosystem is not ready for it. We struggled because there were some people who said they weren't ready for it, and so on and so forth. but over a period of time, and to your point on social media and the YouTubes and the Facebooks and the Googles of the world, who all move to these structures, by the way, as time goes by and our customers experience more and more of the internet, of e-commerce, of social media, this is inevitable. It is inevitable that they will ask us some of these tough questions, and it may not be this design eventually, but it will be these answers, because the questions are bound to come. I mean, they're asking us when we go to them and ask them now, but they'll demand those answers as users at some point of time. And I just think that, just like the McDonald's example, one day we are going to be looking back at this day and saying, thank God we did it.
Fantastic discussion. Thank you for your time, Rameet. Thank you. That's all we have time for. Thank you.